Hey guys, welcome to Amity Tracks. At long last, we're going to wrap up our Bruce Springsteen studio album rankings. Sorry, it's a bit of time between videos. I was out of town and taking care of some stuff. But you waited, and we're back. We're back. So if you missed the first video, I recommend checking that out. We went from number 27 to 11, and I explain in that video how I got to 27, got to that number. But now it's time for the big boys, right? It's time for the top 10 in our Springsteen countdown. We're looking at studio albums. Like I mentioned before, this is the first time on this channel that we're sort of revisiting an artist that we had already ranked like 2 years ago. But with the release of the Lost albums, right? Tracks 2, we have added. Well, there's one I didn't count, so 6 new records, in the discography. And so, be interesting to see where they were slotted in. We talked about a lot of them in the last video, but there was one left. So if you watched that previous video, you couldn't have failed to have noticed what is left, which is like all the 1970s and all the 1980s, right? Plus one lost album. There's still one out there. And then also one kind of stray record from 2017. So where do these go? Yeah, I was given 1 to 5-star ratings. And here at number 10 is where we get to the first 4-star record. So it's 10 through 4 are going to be 4 stars. And then my top 3 are, Mount Olympus 5-star records. So that's kind of where we are. So there was one lost album left, and that is what I do have at number 10. I've got Somewhere North of Nashville. Now, this one was recorded actually in the wake. No, I'm mixing 2 of them up here. This one was recorded while he was recording Ghost of Tom Joad. And the story here is he was recording Ghost of Tom Joad in the evening, and more somber, singer-songwriter story, very intense kind of narrative songs. And this is what he was knocking out during the daytime, kind of having a lot more fun, supposedly, kind of less substantial stuff. But if you watched the previous video, you already saw that I have discussed Ghost of Tom Joad. So I would much rather listen to this. This is fantastic. So this is the last of the lost albums in this ranking. So I do think this is the gem. This is the gem of that set. A near gem would be the Streets of Philadelphia sessions, and probably Ennio as well. But those are going to be the top 3. I bought the CD set just for financial reasons. But if he does ever release these, on individual, vinyl records, I would buy this in an instant. And also Streets of Philadelphia and Ennio. The rest of them, I'm okay with the CDs. That's fine. This is fantastic. This is a country album. This is not Bruce Springsteen sort of cosplaying country. This is a real country record, and it's delightful. That's how I would describe it. It's fantastic. I think this is great start to finish. And even some people have kind of complained about the Man songs, right? Repo Man, was it Detail Man, Delivery Man, and then also Stand on It, maybe, or it's an old B-side, but he kind of redid Stand on It here. Yeah, I like those. I think those add to the pacing, because if it were all just country weepers, it'd just be too much kind of the same sound. But I think it flows really well, goes back and forth. It's a lot of fun. There's fantastic playing on here. And again, I should have had this out before, but when I was reviewing the lost albums, I had to go to the credits here as well, because I keep Marty Rifkin is the pedal steel player on here. Fantastic. The pedal steel, really, the whole band here is great. I think this is a great record, start to finish. This in the Streets of Philadelphia sessions, and Ennio, I guess. Those 3, if he had put those out in the 1990s, would have vastly changed the whole narrative of, the 90s being a lost decade for Springsteen and all that kind of stuff. Man, is the stuff that he held back. It's just crazy. But yeah, I love this all the way through. Probably some favorites. I do, like I said, I do like the kind of the faster sort of rockabilly type, fun songs. But I think the best songs are the slower songs. The cover of "Poor Side of Town" is gorgeous. Uh, the original version of "Somewhere North of Nashville," a more spare version of that song ends up on Western Stars later. But I think this is the superior version of that song. "You're Gonna Miss Me When I'm Gone" is beautiful. My favorite track on here is "Janie, Don't You Lose Heart," which, again, the title should be familiar to some of you guys because that was a B-side from the Born in the USA era. Again, I think this is the superior version here. I just think this is fantastic all the way through. He's not cosplaying, country. This is a country record, straight up, and it's a fantastic one. And yeah, I mentioned before, sometimes he kind of, especially as his folk stuff, he sort of takes on that annoying kind of country twang, but kind of works here because he's doing country songs. So it really does work here. All right. So there you go. Number 9. And again, we're 4-star territory here. Number 9, I have to apologize ahead of time to our good friend over at Lost Mixtapes, Todd, because this is where I do have Nebraska, right? Nebraska from 1981, I believe, 82, sorry, 82. Nebraska. Again, Springsteen's one of my very favorite artists. We're in 4-star territory here, so I'm not dogging Nebraska at all. Very respectable at number 9. But other people, like I imagine Lost Mixtapes, would have this much higher. But so you guys know the story behind Nebraska. These were demos that he fully intended, they're going to bring to the band. They were going to flesh them out. It's going to be a rock record, whatever. But several people kind of convinced him that these demos were more powerful, in their original state. And so a bold move in 1982 put this out. You've got to understand how, Bruce was, he was on the rise. He was already a big artist, but he was about to really, bust out, obviously, with his next record. And it's bold to put something like this out, something raw like this. And, it's now a lot of indie artists do this kind of stuff all the time, but because this record blazed the trail, because, Bruce was one of the very first to do that, a major artist like that. And I mean, it's great. It's fantastic. All that being said, why do I have it number 9 instead of, 2 or 3 or something? This is one of the records, and I think I used this line on a few records in the previous video, that I probably admire more than I really enjoy listening to start to finish. There are 3 songs on here that I really love. Atlantic City, of course, just brilliant. Hard to play, by the way. Hard to play and sing, by the way. Like, it's not hard to play on the guitar. It's not really all that hard to sing. And then if you want to throw a harmonica on there, that's tricky. But because I've tried. It's actually, like, to play that rhythm and sing the way in the rhythm he sings, it's actually kind of deceptively tricky, really. Yeah. Anyway, Atlantic City's brilliant song. I love State Trooper. Spooky atmosphere. I love the way that's recorded. Great song. And then Highway Patrolman, which in my view is I think that's his best set of lyrics in his career of any song. That really is, in 5 minutes, a full story, detailed, nuanced story. Brilliant in 5 minutes. It's like a movie. It's like a mini movie, which I do believe was Sean Penn. I should have looked this up before. Didn't Sean Penn, I think, direct a film based on that song and made it a full movie or something like that? I mean, it's an incredible song. Like I said, I kind of admire the rest more than really listen to it. I don't pull out Nebraska and listen to it start to finish all that much, but as an important record, as no doubt. All right, let's see. I've got my list here, but then in the time in between I made this list and actually making the video, I've shuffled up this bottom half of the top 10 here. So at number 8, I have The River, predecessor to Nebraska from 1980. His double album, right? A true double album, The River. In the previous video, when I was talking about The Rising, there was one of my complaints about The Rising was that if he had actually taken some of the songs off, it would have been a much tighter, concise, piece of work, and actually been better. It would have been in my top 10. And there was someone in the comments that says, "Well, if you're going to say that about The Rising, then you got to say that about The River too." Well, I do. That is one of my complaints about The River. I do think it's a little bloated. He could have made a much tighter, better single record. I know people sort of adore the sprawling double album of The River, but there's close to half of this maybe that I don't know if I want to say is filler, but some of it comes close to it for me, at least. I mean, there's I love The Ties That Bind, Jackson Cage, Two Hearts, Hungry Heart, of course, Out in the Street. I love that song because I remember seeing him do that live. I saw him on the Born in the USA tour, and that was just the energy in that song, and that always stuck with me. So I love that song. The title track, of course, is gorgeous. But you really get on that second album, there's less that I love there. I love Stolen Car. I think that's beautiful and haunting. Fade Away, a lot of people kind of criticize that as a sort of minor single. I like that. But yeah, some of this other stuff I could do without. Now, what's interesting is, I don't know how many of you guys have this, but this is, The Ties That Bind, the River Collection. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 CDs in here. And, this is basically the entire River sessions. What always astounds me about Springsteen is, as great as some of his records are, some of them could be greater when you get these collections of like all the outtakes, all the extra songs, the B-sides and everything. The stuff he chooses to leave off, some of these records just baffles me. If you take, this is cool. Yeah, there. I have some of the CDs kind of up on my shelf here, but you get a remastered version of The River. Now he actually did turn in a single, like one album version of this. And what's cool is they do include that in this set, and I think that would have been a much weaker album, the one he chose. But the 2 CDs of additional outtakes and stuff is just amazing. And the fact that he left some of that stuff in the vaults is crazy. There's like a bunch of stuff in here. I'm looking for the track listing of, what is this? There's all kind of, these are just lyrics and stuff. Let's see. There's a big book that came with it. Bruce always puts out these fantastic, nice sets. Where is? Oh well, can't find it. But suffice it, like Loose Ends, Stray Bullet. I can't believe he left that off there. I'm drawing a blank on some of the titles, but there's like 10 songs on these outtakes that I think could have made The River. They're just fantastic, but they didn't. So we're judging The River. So I have The River here at number 8. All right. Let's see. Number 7. Number 7 is a very interesting record to me. Number 7 is, I remember when this came out. This is a record that I think when it came out, it was very underrated. But the consensus has swung so much on this record that now I think it's kind of overrated, as good as it is. I'm talking about 1987's Tunnel of Love. Because I remember when this came out, it was the reviews were, it was like good. Some were kind of negative. One of them always sticks with me. I forget who wrote it or what publication it was in, but the title of the review was Bored, like Bored, Bored in the USA. So I think people were expecting, Born in the USA Part 2 or something, and I think it was very smart He didn't do that. He didn't try and just kind of make another Born in the USA, because it just, he couldn't have done it, and it would have been diminishing returns. So it's very smart for him to sort of shift gears and make a much more introspective record, kind of a loose concept record on relationships. Now, yeah, a lot of these are very dark songs. You know what was going on in his personal life at the time. His first marriage was unraveling at the time, so kind of understand the root of some of these songs in hindsight, right? But yeah, this is another one that kind of like Nebraska. In some ways, I admire more than want to listen to all the way through. But there are 4 songs on here. And you probably know what they are. This stretch, that opening stretch on side 2, that I think is some of his greatest work. Period. Tunnel of Love, Two Faces, Brilliant Disguise, One Step Up. Genius, just brilliant stuff. But I don't think he maintains that level on the rest of the record. It's actually pretty rare that I ever want to put on side 1. In fact, I just listened to it very recently, just to remind myself of a lot of, and it's good. It's good stuff. It's a great record, but yeah, I've seen multiple rankings where some people put this in like the number 1 slot. I'm like, are you nuts? But it's great. So I have it at number 7. All right. I did want to mention one thing. This is sort of a forgotten EP, live EP from the Tunnel of Love tour that he put out like 1988. It's got 4 tracks on it. There is an acoustic version of Born to Run on here that is one of my all-time favorite Springsteen tracks. Of course, the original is the original, but it is, it gets me every time. I love that song so much, and I associate it so much with Tunnel of Love. It's almost like when I think of Tunnel of Love, or I make a mix or something, I want Tunnel of Love songs. I put those 4 songs from the album on, and this live acoustic version of Born to Run. I just always do it. Go check that out. Chimes of Freedom is the name of the EP, and that live acoustic it's gorgeous. Anyway, all right, 7. Where are we at? Number 6. Number 6 has been a divisive album in Springsteen's catalog. There are people that adore this record. I obviously do, having it number 6. But there are many others I've seen who kind of dismiss it as sort of a minor side project and don't really even consider it a major work of his. I obviously do. It's well, other than Somewhere North of Nashville, it's the only other thing in this top 10 that's not from the 80s or the 70s. And so this is where I do have Western Stars. I love Western Stars. When I was kind of making this list, I actually had a little higher, but I was like, okay, come on, we can't go crazy here. But number 6, solid, spot on the Springsteen list. I love Western Stars. Now, he's trying to write and sing and create these songs sort of in this, they call it countrypolitan sometimes, right? Like Glenn Campbell, Jimmy Webb, kind of those type of songwriters, kind of Southern California, late 60s, early 70s, kind of a really deliberate, and he made this over actually a long period. He started in the early 2000 teens, kind of, went to some other things, came back to it, finally released it in 2017. And I love it. I think it's brilliant songwriting, his best songwriting of the 2000 or the 21st century, and beautiful arrangements. And I just love it all the way through. I should do a whole video on this album, because I don't want this video to be too long, and I could talk about this record for a long time. But really, I could break down every song. The title track, I think, is stunningly good. Not just musically, but lyrically. The imagery he has in that, the title track. Right? Where is it? I'm just trying to find some. Yeah, I'm sorry. I guess it's in here. Some of these lines. Oh, there it is. Yeah, Western Stars. Yeah, I mean, just this sort of washed up kind of B-level actor who's sort of living off being kind of having a bit part in a John Wayne movie, and how he kind of gets that's bought him 1,000 free drinks, telling that story over and over again, and he's talking about being in a commercial for for the blue pill, right? Um, but no, I mean it's just great. The here in the canyons above sunset, the deserts don't give up the fight. A coyote with someone's chihuahua in its teeth skitters across my veranda in the night. Just love that imagery. I mean, you know, I mean, you can just kind of see that sort of the night kind of in the hills in L.A. and I love this record, love it. All right, here we go. That was six. So here we are at five. Number five. This might be kind of high for this one. A lot of people forget about this. They just don't talk about it very much. But his debut, Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey. I love the packaging too. Kind of like in this, like opens up like a postcard, right? The very young Bruce there. I love this. Obviously, I love this record. I think it's fantastic. Now, the complaint here is that he really hadn't found his sound yet, at least on record, right? And I've got bootlegs and stuff. His live shows don't sound like this from this period. This is much more subdued, because Columbia Records kind of thought they had a singer-songwriter type, and they were, the new Dylan or, whatever they were trying to promote him as. And so, this record doesn't rock nearly as hard as he was capable of doing, in the 70s especially. That being said, I still just really love these songs. I mean, it's almost cute, how he's just really trying to impress with his lyrics. The lyrics are just stumbling all over the place. Some of it just nonsense, but just great wordplay. Obviously, Blinded by the Light, although I do prefer the Manfred Mann cover on that. Growing Up. Does this bus stop at 82nd Street? I love Lost in the Flood, although there's on that Hammersmith live album, there's that live version of that song is definitive for me. But it's hard to be a saint in the city. There's a reason David Bowie covered that song. And Spirit in the Night, right? Which to this day, kind of off and on, has remained in his set list. It's a classic. So I love his debut. I think it's underrated, actually, because people just don't talk about it as much because of what, kind of the string of records that came right after that, right? Which we haven't talked about yet for obvious reasons. All right. That was five. So number four. Number four is the Juggernaut. Number four is, where I got on board because of my age. Number four is where I do have Born in the USA. Yeah, I mean, do I pull this out a ton? Probably not. Just because, you grew up in that era. You played this to death. You heard it to death. But it still doesn't diminish the accomplishment here. This is where he does go for the commercial juggernaut, right? And he hits it. There were 7 singles off this record. Could you say that some of this material is a little dated? Maybe. But I think it's an indication of how deep this record is. That my favorite song on here is not one of the 7 singles, right? My favorite song on here, is Downbound Train. And I also love Bobby Jean, No Surrender. But none of those were the singles. So just shows you how deep this record is. It was an event. I got on board here. My older brothers took me to that show, massive football stadium in Dallas, and to this day, I've never kind of just felt an energy like that in such a huge place. It was indescribable, really. These are kind of fun. I just pulled these out for funsies. Now these are dated, but I do have the dance mixes, the dance remixes of Cover Me and Born in the USA. Here's a dance mix of Born in the USA and Dancing in the Dark, which makes a little more sense. But these are more for chuckles, but they're kind of fun. This is cool. I did want to show you these. Just to kind of show you how crazy I was about Born in the USA at the time. I do have all the 45 singles, all 740, the 745s from the singles that were released. So it's kind of cool. You got because the reason Springsteen collectors before these sets, like The Promise and all tracks and all that stuff came out. The only way to get some of these rare B-sides was, you had to go find the singles. And Bruce was the first artist that I was aware of. Maybe there were others before him, but the first artist that I was aware of who would put on the B sides of his singles, tracks that weren't from the album. And so they instantly, for Bruce fanatics, you had to go find all the singles because get those B sides, right. That's 7 more songs here, from Born in USA era that weren't on the album, right. But here's Glory Days with Stand on It as the B side. Here's I'm Going Down with Janie Don't You Lose Heart as the B side. Here's My Hometown, probably my least favorite Springsteen single, honestly, with, of course, that live version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town on there, which you hear, at least used to hear on the radio every Christmas time. There's Cover Me with that live version of Jersey Girl. I think that later showed up on that the 75, 85 box set. Here's I'm on Fire with Johnny Bye Bye. I love that one. Now, these are the last two, which I, at some point, obviously lost the original sleeves. So I've got Born in the USA in this RCA sleeve. But Shut Out the Light, the B-side there. And then, of course, Dancing in the Dark with a Pink Cadillac as the B-side on there. So it's kind of cool that, have all the singles there. All right, top 3. Like I said, 5-star Mount Olympus. In my opinion, 3 of the greatest albums ever made. I do have a personal, actually, top 500 that I've been working on for like 5 years. But these 3 records are within my top 25 of all time, any artist. I mean, love these 3 records. You could really kind of juggle them around, but this is my order. At number 3, I do have Darkness on the Edge of Town, 1978. I read a review somewhere that was saying this is probably his strongest single set of songs. Maybe. I think my next one probably has the strongest single set. But this, of course, after kind of the building up of those first 3 records, these epic songs, really culminating in Born to Run. Then of course he had that protracted kind of legal fight with Mike Appel, his original manager. And he kind of emerged a lot more streamlined. And, this is kind of where he stopped writing on the piano and started writing on the guitar. And you can really tell the difference. But I mean, Badlands, Adam Raised a Cain, Something in the Night, Candy's Room, Racing in the Street. I mean, I'm just reading you the whole, track listing here. Promised Land. Factory's maybe the only song on here that I'm not a huge fan of, but it's all right. Streets of Fire, Prove It All Night, Darkness on the Edge of Town. I mean, incredible set. And as if that wasn't enough, as you probably know, much later he put out The Promise, which is basically all the other songs from these sessions that didn't make this record. And you have 3 records of additional tracks, some of which really could have been highlights on this record or on a record. Well, I don't know what you'd take off here. Maybe I'd take Factory off, be the only one, but an alternate version of Racing in the Street was really powerful. What else is great? Because the Night, it's a killer song. Should have been a huge single. It kind of gave it away to Patti Smith, right? What else? Rendezvous. It's pretty amazing. Fire. The Pointer Sisters had a hit with, and then later he had a live version of that from the box set that was played a lot on MTV. But this is the original studio version, which is awesome. The Promise. Oh my God. That song is stunningly great. It's such a great kind of vocal reference back to Thunder Road. If he had put that song on Darkness, on the record that followed Born to Run, where Thunder Road was located, I think that would have been an amazing callback. A gorgeous song, The Promise. But anyway, Darkness on the Edge of Town. And in my opinion, from all the bootleg live material that I've collected over the years, I think this was probably his greatest tour, is the Darkness tour. Just amazing live shows. All right, number 2, I do have that I think, objectively speaking, is probably his greatest record. But it's in my 2 slot. And that's where I have Born to Run. Just the iconic gatefold here. Bruce in there. I mean, I think this is Bruce sort of on an epic scale. He never really got any better than this, in my opinion. Thunder Road and Born to Run. Maybe if you had to pick two of his most classic songs, there you go, opening each side. 10th Avenue Freeze Out, Backstreets is an epic. She's the One, great rocker. I love Meeting Across the River. I think that is, listen to the lyrics on that. Again, such a great detailed story. Beautiful, kind of melancholy song, which is great kind of quiet song before the epic closer of Jungle Land, right? Just perfectly placed and paced. That trumpet by Randy Brecker on there too is gorgeous. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you say? Jungle Land is probably his most epic song ever. I mean, a street opera, right? Yeah, as he referred to it. Yeah, I think it's smart, kind of where he went after this with Darkness on the Edge of Town. You this was sort of the end of the road of this Bruce. He couldn't do this any better, and so it's almost like he had to kind of shift gears a little bit. Which, again, he's always been smart about that. He couldn't do this any better, so you get Darkness on the Edge of Town. He couldn't do Born in the USA any better, so he does Tunnel of Love. He's always been good about kind of knowing when to switch gears and keep his art fresh, right? Yeah, man. Born to Run. So what does that leave? That leaves an album that's in my top 10 favorite albums of all time. Uh, Desert Island Stuff, obviously. His second record, The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle. This is my favorite Springsteen. This is a very different Springsteen than even Born to Run, right? I mean, this is what he sounded like in the clubs in those early years. I mean, a lot more expansive, almost kind of some jazzy influences, a lot more jamming, but just really exciting, expanded songs. I adore this record, obviously. A key factor here is the personnel in the E Street Band here. This is before Steve Van Zandt joined. There's only one guitarist in the band, and that's Bruce. So there's kind of more room. It is not as cluttered in the guitar sound, and it's all Bruce, and he's a hell of a guitar player. He proves on this record. You don't have Max Weinberg yet on drums. You've got Vinny Mad Dog Lopez. Max Weinberg, much more technically proficient drummer, but Max Weinberg does not swing like Vinny Lopez. Vinny Lopez had this kind of swinging drum style that you hear on Greetings from Asbury Park, but especially on here, that was just, I don't know. I love Vinny Lopez's drumming. I think Bruce's sound really changed. And again, there's no knock on Max Weinberg, great drummer, but he didn't have the swing. And then David Sanchez. This is before Roy Bittan joined. David Sanchez on piano. And again, I mean, Roy Bittan, just, amazing pianist, done an amazing session work on a lot of other people's stuff too, right? From Meatloaf to Dire Straits, as well as being, key to Bruce's sound ever since Born to Run, really. But David Sanchez also, turned out to be a hell of a session player for decades afterwards, playing with Sting and all kinds of people. But David Sanchez had a kind of a more swing, more kind of jazzier feel than Roy Bittan does. And so with Vinny Lopez on drums and David Sanchez on piano, there's a different sound on here. Of course, you got Clarence Clemens is already there from the beginning. Danny Federici is already there. Gary Tallent's already there. But yeah, I just love this E Street Band. And these are epics. I mean, a song like Wild Billy's Circus Story. Again, the lyrics are great. He's just painting this scene of this traveling circus, and it's so vivid, and all these different characters. And he's got the tuba in there, and it's the mandolin and the accordion, and just never sounded like that since. Kitty's Back, of course, is just this epic, just bar band just jamming out like crazy for 10 minutes. It's just so good. 4th of July, Asbury Park, Sandy, of course. But it's side two. The three songs, those three epic songs that make up side two, It's the greatest side. My greatest. Again, I think Born to Run objectively is his greatest album, but my favorite side of any Bruce album is side 2 of this. Incident on 57th Street. Again, this street story goes right into Rosalita Come Out Tonight, which for hardcore Bruce fans may be their favorite live song. People still request that song to this day. And New York City Serenade. It's a gorgeous song. I think his longest song, right? I think. Um, God, that side 2 is just unassailable. So, yes, there you go. Well, all right, guys. That's my top 10 Bruce Springsteen studio albums. Let's hear it in the comments. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? What do you guys think? Let's talk Bruce. And then in our next video, we will move on to another artist. But it's been a lot of fun kind of revisiting Bruce's catalog here. And again, slotting in those lost albums, seeing where they fall. But we'll see you next time on Amity Tracks.